On tonight's program, we talk about recreating old games.
Is that something that we're allowed to do?
Technically no. The best interactions we've had with players.
I mean, it really resonates with me when they realize something I hid away.
And we go off on several tangents. Blame the downtime. I realize that they have established that kind of relationship as much as they can within two 2-hour movies. Only it's not Kirk and Spock. It's the relationship that exists there in that context is between Kirk and Scotty. Join us on the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogyn1701. With me is ex-prize fighter Hippiejohn.
I won that fight. I didn't have to quit.
And expert chainsaw juggler Greendragoon.
It only takes one to miss.
And today we have with us Rellimtime. Rellim, of course, being Miller spelled backwards. I can already tell what I'm going to title this episode.
Hello. What?
And I wish we could start with Foundry news, but unfortunately there isn't any, because there's just been no updates at all since Friday.
Well, we had a few more come through the or republish.
Have we?
Okay. Yeah, there have been. I'm seeing the mission list grow. It doesn't strike me that it's republishing as expected, however. I don't know why. I have a feeling.
Because most of mine were up on Friday, except for one, and it's still gone. So, I mean, I figured there might be some problem, something moved or prevented it from publishing there.
I know Midas has not shown up yet.
None of mine have shown up yet. But I only have two, so...
Obviously, we still have a ways to go.
I'm wondering if it has to do with when the missions were last republished. Because I did a republish of Midas just before the Foundry downtime to prep it.
They've never really told us if there's any kind of an order to how they come back.
I know.
Yeah.
Rellim, how long have your missions been up?
I had the first one up since the Foundry Authors Academy. But
so
that's
relatively recent then.
Yeah. And the second one was like a month after that, so...
Yeah, because mine are quite old, to be honest.
I suppose I could go look. Last I checked, they hadn't had all of the spotlights republished yet. Was one of the things I noticed.
Well, I mean, it just same place we were last week. It's kind of a waiting game. So
I appear to have lost my 10-penny bet.
The 2-week mark passed yesterday, Tuesday.
Yep.
So
I really thought with all of the indication that they were checking things out on Tribble first. With all of that, it just seemed to me like it was going to be a smoother republish. But yeah, apparently I'm wrong.
Well, I think it's because it's a bigger update.
It's probably because it's a bigger.
And they've got a lot of other things.
But it wasn't a huge update for the Foundry. And I wonder though if there was either some sort of weird code thing from elsewhere in the game that screwed up the Foundry republish, or if it was one of the little updates that we got, like the reach marker thing. Maybe they're waiting until they can fix that.
That might be. Yeah,
I think also the Foundry is, at least I believe, is far more connected than people believe it to be. Because, I mean, I know if they make any updates to, like, existing assets, it will also affect what happens in the Foundry.
I remember when they updated Klingon ships, when they updated the powers of Klingon ships, and I remember certain authors talking about how that made their missions not unplayable, but they had to go back and rethink combat balance and such.
Yeah, there's a definite relationship between the Foundry and the rest of the game.
Well, but I mean, and one of the unfortunate things is during these downtimes we don't get a lot of communication.
No.
We never really have. I mean, they never come on and say, "Oh, hey guys, it's 10% done," and next week is "Oh, hey guys, it's 70% done." They don't do that, and I mean, maybe there's just nothing to say, and they don't. I'm sure they don't want to give ETAs, and that's fine.
Right.
But yeah, they don't want to go out and say, "Oh, it's 90% done," and then an hour later find out that they have to restart because something went wrong with republish.
Absolutely.
And everyone starts coming on the forum saying, it's like, well, you said it was at 90%. Why isn't it up yet?
I know why they don't do that. It's because they've done that before and it bit him in the butt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just gotta wait. But in any case, so I'm going to go off the beaten path just a tad here, because I have something that I think is just an interest for people with an interest in writing or Star Trek in general. On the remastered Next Generation Season 3 Blu-ray set, there's a fantastic behind-the-scenes feature. Okay, it's Seth MacFarlane, who's the guy behind Family Guy and a well-known Star Trek fan. He sits down with 4 of the writers from TNG, and they just talk for an hour. This must have been fairly recently that they filmed this thing. They talk about writing, they talk about Season 3 and the show in general, what it was like to work on the show. Let's see, it's Ron Moore, Brandon Braga, Naren Shankar, and I can't remember the other guy's name. And they just spend the whole hour, they talk about the difficulties they had, the episodes they liked, the ones they hated, what the process in the writing room was, difficulties working with Gene Roddenberry, how Patrick Stewart always wanted Picard to get laid more. That's absolutely true. And it's just an absolutely fascinating thing, and I was just glued to the TV for the whole hour. So I highly recommend it, especially for Foundry authors, because it's just absolute great from people who know what it is to write Star Trek. Nice. And I mean, for me, these guys are some of the people who are just in the, I mean, everybody's going to have a different opinion as to what is the heyday of Star Trek, what is the golden age of Star Trek.
Right.
But for me, it's that kind of early 90s period where you had the Next Gen was firing on all cylinders. Deep Space Nine was starting up. You had the Next Generation movies, which started around that time, and Voyager, which I've always liked. It's not the best of the shows, but I've always
liked it. It has its moments.
And you had the last couple of Star Trek 6, which was pretty good. The last one of the original series cast movies was in that time frame. And I just think that's when there was so much good Trek out there, and there were even some other good computer games that were Star Trek computer games that were floating around there. So,
that is something that is so bugged me, is that none of the old Star Trek games have shown up on Steam or good old games.
I know, right? I've installed it a few of my old ones, and gotten them to work. Sometimes you have to Google and find other people's workarounds, but Starfleet Academy and Elite Force and Armada.
So here's a question. We're talking about old Star Trek games. One thing in user-generated content that I've seen for a long time, I used to create missions and adventures and modules on Neverwinter Nights and Neverwinter Nights 2 when they were out, so that the community of modules, there were tons of them that were shared there, and people would grab their old favorite pen and paper D&D module and they would make a version of it for the game. Now, if we're talking about old Star Trek games that had plots and stories and things that we really enjoyed, like Starfleet Academy or Star Trek Klingon, or in my case, I loved Star Trek Away Team in 2001, are these old games something that we could, using the Foundry, make a version of, so that people could play this game they remember, play the story-ish that they remember playing from way back when? Is that something that we're allowed to do?
Technically no, because I think you would run into plagiarism issues.
Right.
But that said, you could adapt them and, rewrite it all in your own words and adapt it to Stowe. Doing something like Elite Force, which I always thought had a great plot. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, this was a first-person shooter, back from the early 2000s.
Only first-person shooter I liked.
Yep, same here.
It was Voyager, and you were sort of this elite team of security guys that they had formed on Voyager to take care of the big threats. And Voyager got sucked into this, I can't remember what they called it. Just this sort of void of nothingness where all these other ships had come, and you had to fight off scavengers and you had to fight the Borg and all just to try to get out of this sort of null area of space.
Mm-hmm.
And it featured all the original cast voices eventually.
Right.
And I don't know, it was a lot of fun. So, I mean, you could create a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have to be a similar situation, not the same one, I think.
It's one of those that I sit back and I'm like, it'd have to be similar. It couldn't be the same. Any of the games that used, Star Trek, the Borg game from way back when, for example, had John Delancey, and such. So we couldn't obviously use those characters, but
Star Trek Borg was such an awesome game. I think that was some of John Delancey's best performance in that game.
It was great. I loved it.
So I always remember just the Borg ride from the Star Trek Las Vegas thing in the Hilton. But I don't remember what the plot was of that, if it indeed had a plot. I don't know.
Not really. It didn't really have a plot.
It was just
you were just back in time to the time during where you were at. But yeah, no plot.
Mm-hmm.
Rides don't need big plots.
That's true. No, you just it's like Star Tours.
I was actually going to ask, did you guys either play Star Trek 25th Anniversary?
I have not. No, it was one of those that I always saw in the store, never got around to getting.
Oh, I mean, it was like classic DOS original series adventure game.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually really good. In fact, they did a later version that actually brought in like all the voices, but it's just one of those things. I mean, it was all really good story, and actually it had a sequel called Judgment Rights. But it's funny, I've actually saw an advertisement for a Foundry mission that was going back and recreating those old missions from that game in the Foundry. And there was another mission I played that didn't copy any of the stories, but it borrowed a mechanic from those missions. It used to be, in those missions, once you had completed the mission, and there'd be all this things, you'd have to go to planets and solve things to kind of solve the mystery and all that sort of thing, and resolve the situation. And at the end of it, you would contact the Admiral, and she would say give you a percentage of how well you did on the mission. And 100% being you made the best choices ever, none of your red shirts died, stuff like that. And this particular mission I played, I wish I could remember the title, was actually an entire mission on a single map, and then it used state transitions to change scenes, which is really cool because you actually have options about which scenes you go to. It's not all the same. It changes depending on which choices you make. But at the end of that, they did something cool where you get a rating, and it tells you, okay, you did such and such % correct. And it goes through each of your decisions and says, okay, in this case, you probably should have done this. This was the correct decision here. And it kind of tells you how you did.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
Isn't that sort of a relic of the old text-based adventure games where it would tell you, you get a certain score based on if you accomplished everything? And it would tell you those things at the end of the game? Well,
I mean, 25th Anniversary was fully DOS graphics in all of its glory. It looked really nice for DOS.
Well, the one I always hold up as one of the best Star Trek games was Starfleet Academy. Partially because it was in that era where they were doing the full motion video cutscenes, and they had almost the entire original cast in it, which is pretty cool. So, if you want some more material with the original cast that you've never seen before, go check out that game. I mean, sometimes it's a stretch to get it to work on modern systems, but it is possible.
Yeah, there was a lot of interest. I mean, Star Trek is such an odd thing to port to a computer game, but at the same token, in the few instances where, and I shouldn't say few because I mean there's been quite a few good Star Trek games.
Yeah. More than people realize, I think.
Yeah, I think usually the best ones are the ones that manage to bring over some of the story of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are even some good ones back in on Nintendo, the original Nintendo system.
I think the reason people forget about some of the good ones is because there have been some bad ones too.
True.
Certainly. Mm-hmm. And when they're bad, they really stand out as bad.
I hear the most recent one was fairly terrible.
I tried it. A friend of mine bought it, and I tried it and didn't enjoy it at all as far as a gaming experience goes. It was a very typical modern kind of actiony, shootery kind of it. It didn't feel Star Trek to me, basically.
That's the problem with tie-in games, is that if they are creating a game to be a tie-in,
Yeah, they tend to be pretty bad, usually.
Yeah.
It's very rare to find a good one. I think maybe, the only good one that I know of was the tie-in for for Star Wars The Phantom Menace. I think was better than the movie.
Which tie-in game was that?
Well, there were a couple, because there was the pod racing game, which was fun.
Yep.
And then there was it was like a third person one where you got to be the Jedi and go through the plot of the movie.
Okay, I remember that vaguely. I didn't play it. I don't think
the pod racing a long time.
The pod racing game was what I expected, though, I have to say, and that after seeing that film, I realized what we were going to see from. I mean, we were already seeing it when we were kids. We just didn't know it in the first three, in that there was the obvious toy tie-in, or the obvious, in this case, with the more modern films, the obvious video game tie-in. As soon as they showed us an image from inside of the pod, what Anakin was seeing, I sat back and went, there's our video game right there. We're going to race around Tatooine. And 3 months later, a month later, whatever, lo and behold, there was a game about racing pod racing around Tatooine.
Of course, then you get the movie or tie-in games that show up slightly before the movie is released.
Mm-hmm. That's what the Star Trek one did.
Spoil the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
Of course, the Star Trek one did not follow the plot of the movie.
No, not at all. I think it was like.
But I think like some of the Harry Potter ones have.
Mm-hmm. Part of the thing that the Star Trek game might have done, that it might have been good for me to actually play through the entire game and just to experience Kirk and Spock being buddy-buddy.
I was going to talk to you about that.
In that case, the tie-in game, putting something between the films and the comics and using them to advance the story might have helped my enjoyment of the film a little bit.
It's possible.
It's entirely.
I was going to talk to you about that because, of course, one of your criticisms is that you didn't feel like you felt like they were telegraphing the Kirk Spock relationship.
Yeah.
Well,
I really.
The second time I watched the movie Into Darkness, I realized that they have established that sort of relationship, and established it fairly well. I mean, as well as you can probably do within 2 2-hour movies. Only it's not Kirk Spock. It's Kirk and Scotty. Because in this iteration, Kirk and Scotty have been through a lot more together, and he's disconnected.
He's like, I don't want to hear your shit.
I don't want to hear it.
Doesn't have time for your theories, Drogyn.
So this is where Admiral Cartwright yells, "Get him back! Get him back!"
That was totally me. You got me interested, and I pulled my out. I sat up. I was like, "Oh God!"
And he pulled it at the absolute worst moment too.
I was like, "Wait a minute, this sounds really cool," and I sat up, and my headphone cord just came right out of the computer and shut down Skype. I went, "Oh no,
guys, we can't write this stuff."
So what was the reason that I missed here?
Okay. I realize that they have established that kind of relationship as much as they can within 2 2-hour movies. Only it's not Kirk and Spock. It's the relationship that exists there in that context is between Kirk and Scotty. Because they show them together a lot more. They show them interacting a lot more. They show them being friends a lot more. They show them going through all kinds of stuff together, the two of them, and they don't show that with Kirk and Spock.
And they even kind of show the relationship in Into Darkness in the scene where Kirk and Scotty are having the moment about not bringing the damn torpedoes on board.
Yeah. And and who does Kirk call for help?
Scotty. There was an obvious relationship there. Which does not help my enjoyment of the Kirk Spock relationship.
No, because of course they want you to talk about the Kirk Spock relationship, even though it's not there. In this iteration.
As I've said, the simplest way that I can say the way I feel about that is it feels like they're depending on my former opinions and my former feelings about that relationship between Kirk and Spock.
See, they should have had Scotty do the scene where he puts his hand up against glass and I always have been your friend.
Yeah, that would
should have had Scotty yelling, "Khan!"
They didn't even need to have anyone yell "Khan" in that film, to be quite honest. They really did.
I was going to say, that would not have made that scene any less funny.
There's a word for that they coined over on TV tropes. They call it NARM.
NARM.
Essentially something that is played seriously, but is so bad it becomes funny and becomes actually sort of good because it was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Talking to a guy who used to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Well, I mean, I love the show so much.
When I go back and watch Star Trek II, the original Khan moment is really kind of hilarious. I mean, they pull back away from the cave outside the planet, and you still hear Kirk's voice echoing in space. It's really well over. It's as hilarious a scene in its own right as the new one in Into Darkness, but in a whole different way. The one in Into Darkness, yeah, the one in Into Darkness is funny because it's so stupid to me. At least that's why it's funny to me. Mm-hmm. That him screaming Khan. The original one was funny because they just overdid it, like they did so much in the 80s. They just overdid everything in the 80s, and hey, it was the 80s.
That is Shatner's most understated performance as Kirk throughout the entire series.
Really is.
And you ever listen to the director's commentary?
No.
On Star Trek II?
I've never actually had a DVD or a video with the director's commentary.
Living in the dark ages, man. Well, you're hippie, so I guess that works. That figures right. Okay, so the Nicholas Meyer, he's talking about how he would force William Shatner to go through so many takes that he would eventually get tired and he would stop overacting. And so he would use the last takes, and they would be great.
That sounds like the smartest guy in the world.
That's super.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really super.
Absolutely. So you guys can see that we're sort of waffling about through different topics because there's not much Foundry to talk about.
It really isn't. There is storytelling to talk about. There's always storytelling to talk about.
There's really, always things to bring back to the Foundry.
Yeah, there's always storytelling lessons. Anytime you talk about story, you learn something about it. So
there is one little tidbit, and this came by way of Havraha and podcast UGC. But apparently, those broken, wonderful NPC costumes that we all created our template missions for before the Foundry went down, apparently those have survived the transition.
What do you mean?
I mean that Havraha had put one of those on Helena because he wanted her to be in a bikini. And apparently that mission has since been republished, and Helena's bikini is intact.
So if NPCs that you created through the importer are still
there.
You can't make any more, but the ones that were there were still there.
But yeah, so if you prepped them into your mission before, they should still be there when editing comes back.
And if he's got Helena in a bikini, that means that ones that you created using the weird menu combinations, green fur Cation, Ryan people kind of thing. If whatever you made, those assumedly are still going to exist then?
Assumedly. It sounds like literally all they did was remove that button.
Yeah, they just turned off the button.
Which, isn't too surprising. They would have had to have written this big old script to try and
get rid of it, totally.
Get rid of it, so...
Well,
yeah,
it's good news. That to me is good Foundry news.
I kind of didn't figure that they would remove the NPCs that we created with that.
No, we weren't expecting them to, but it's still good to have a little bit of confirmation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Have any of you guys been doing any writing work on your missions, anything like that? Actually, I have not since the last podcast myself.
I actually decided that, so the Romulan mission, that as soon as we get the editor back up, I'm just going to need a day or two to put, the polish on it. I have one map left to make that might take me a little longer than that. But the Romulan mission, I made it specifically aimed at a KDF allied Romulan, according to the new stories. And what I did with it then was, just having all of this time to think about it, the mission giver that I'm using is one of those political aides to one of the houses in the Great Hall, and I'm using one of the two that are standing in the hallway to the left side of the Great Hall that are talking to each other. When the Romulan allied, the KDF allied Romulan player comes up, he's going to be talking to one of them and getting a mission. And part of that mission is, this is something that involves your people. It is not of concern to our house, but because this is House Wolden, who Wolden was the one that was saved by Tamer at the Khitomer conference. Spoilers, sorry. That because it's House Wolden, he actually does want to help, and so he's giving the Romulan player this information so that he can go do this thing that would be important to a Romulan, but is supposedly not important to House Wolden. What I'm doing is the other house, the other political aid that's standing there is, I'm going ahead and writing a KDF mission that it is actually important to House Wolden. It's just because of their political standing and where they are and interactions with other houses, they can't take any direct action. So this other house summons the KDF player to do something about it under the guise of another house. But I'm using the two that are standing right next to each other in the hallway. So I just basically, the downtime has caused me to start writing another mission.
Yeah, I definitely have a few in mind for the Romulan faction myself. I mentioned a couple of times on here that I was going to adapt a couple of half-finished ones, change them over into Romulan missions, and I've been continuing to think about those and what I'll need to do to switch them over, and a few other things I want to add to them to make sure that it's applicable to somebody in the Romulan Republic rather than a Fed or a KDF ally. Yeah. Okay, so here's the question. Okay, what this mission is you're going to take, the Borg are going to be staging a massive invasion of Romulan space. You find a crashed diamond, and you get to it and download all of its database. The idea is to get to it before the Tal Shiar do, and then blow it up. And it tells you, the location of a place where you could go to do massive damage to the Borg, and you have to go on a suicide run solo into the Delta Quadrant to go, upload a virus or something. I haven't just figured out what you're going to do to cause massive damage yet. But here's my question. Should I, for the moment, make it KDF Romulan or Fed Romulan?
You know what I'm going to say.
I know what you're going to say.
Make it a KDF mission.
Because I have both.
The world needs more KDF missions. The game needs more KDF missions. And actually, what I would say is it needs more good ones. Because all of the things that republished first, guess what they were?
Ludomatic 2000.
Yeah, Ludomatic 2000. Grind this mission. The KDF needs. It has some great missions. One of my two favorite missions in the Foundry is on the KDF side right now, but it needs more. It needs more good missions. So please make it KDF. That.
I would say both.
Well, eventually, of course, we have been told that we'll be able to make our missions for Romulans only, and so the same mission could be seen by Romulans of either.
Well, just duplicate it and switch the factions.
I don't know. I'm not sure I like to take up mission space that way.
It's not like Foundry spots are expensive.
It really.
Was it 10,000 for 4?
See, I personally like playing KDF, but I always play the Fed mission, Foundry missions, because there's just more of them.
Exactly.
People make more missions on the Fed side.
It's easier to write for the Feds.
Oh, that too.
It is.
That's why I write my Fed.
I say it's easier to write well for the Feds.
Yeah, well, KDF requires a very specific mindset.
Mm-hmm. I think it's easier to write for the Feds because we have 5 series worth of Federation heroes to inspire us. Material. 5 television shows worth of multiple seasons of how do you write Federation heroes. Of course, people are going to write that more.
And there's more Federation players.
Lots more.
Of course, I would be interested to know, Brand Flakes, if you're looking at this, if you're listening to this, please, put together one of your cool infographics. What is the split between KDF Romulans and Fed Romulans?
That would be interesting. But I want that, I don't want that infographic 2 weeks out. I want that infographic 6 months out, 4 months out, maybe.
Well, yeah, you gotta wait till it stabilizes, but.
Yeah.
Because right now, if you wander around the game, there are more Romulan players than anything. There's more Romulan than Fed, there's more Romulan than KDF, everyone's playing a Romulan.
Well, because they're shiny and new.
Yeah.
That said, I mean, the new Klingon content is good stuff. I've been playing through it this week.
The new Klingon content is great stuff. Honestly, the two new Birds of Prey are well worth the small investment of Zen to support the KDF, buy those new Birds of Prey. The second one looks really great too. So
yeah, I'm especially curious because I think it can be assumed that there's a certain amount of the player base that is here for the game and not specifically for Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
So
lots.
They would only, up until this expansion, they would have been biased towards Federation just because it was the more accessible.
Right.
But with that accessibility barrier removed, I'm kind of curious to see if
what it will be. The console that they put on the tier 1 version of the Bird of Prey, I'm still using it at Lieutenant General or Vice Admiral level at 50th level because it's essentially a 2-system battery that provides 10 more power to those systems than even your red matter capacitor does. It's a 35 point bump to 2 systems. It's a great little thing, auxiliary and weapons. Okay, I'll take it.
It's a device or a console?
It's a console.
That's the one good thing about the red matter capacitor, though, is it's a device.
It's a device, yeah.
And there just aren't that many good devices in the game.
No, there's not. And whenever I fly a ship that has 4 device slots, I kind of flip a coin as to what I'm going to put in the last slot, and usually end up going and redoing the vault for the Scorpion fighters.
Load up shield, weapon, auxiliary, and engine in that order.
There's also the little thing from the Davidian series.
True, and that is actually a not bad device. Mm-hmm. But, even loading it all up, there just aren't that many good devices.
There's not that many good devices. For space, anyway. For ground, I'm always trying to figure out what to carry.
Yeah, ground, there's lots more.
Yep. So, Drogyn, before we started, you had the idea of talking about what Foundry mission really stuck with us, since we don't have any new ones to review because of the state of the Foundry.
Yeah.
What were you thinking of there?
Well, the idea was, of course, because, a whole lot of Foundry missions are broken. It's tough to find one to really review right now, and we want to be fair, so we don't want to review somebody's mission that's broken, even if we know that they didn't break it themselves. So my thought was, I would ask each of you to think back and, what is a Foundry mission that you've played that stands out in your mind and why?
First one I ever played. And it's not my favorite of Foundry missions out there. My favorite is, of course, a tie between City of the Polmari and the Infinitesimal Frontier. I love those 2 missions. But the first one that I ever played was First Cause Then Effect by RogueEnterprise, the one that has 50, 60,000 plays or whatever. It was the reason that it sticks with me has nothing, however, to do with all of the really cool technical fun things that now that I've worked with the Foundry that I can see were really time consuming and difficult for him to do. What it was I think I got lucky that I chose a mission that was a good story mission for my first Foundry encounter, because what it did was it showed me that there's a tool that allows the stories in the community, because very often I've been a Star Trek fan for a really long time. When I was a teenager, I used to go to conventions in New York City and buy for $5 these super thick magazines of nothing but fan fiction. And there is some great stuff out there. There's some great stuff in the novels, and the good stuff doesn't always have to come just from the people that are officially making the thing. You know, it doesn't have to just be the films or just be the TV show, or in this case, just be what the devs put out there. It was the mission when I played it made me realize that all of that creativity and all of that greatness that I remembered from reading fan fiction when I was a teenager and continuing to read various fiction and Star Trek fiction and be a fan, like, it showed me that our community here in Star Trek Online has some really good authors, and it got me interested in playing the Foundry. So that's why that one stands out in my mind, is it brought me in and I haven't turned back. I've played Foundry missions since then. So that's the one that sticks with me.
Hey, Rellim, you got an idea of one that stands out in your mind?
Well, I haven't really played that many Foundry missions besides the ones I've been reviewing. I've played maybe a couple before that. Because the very first one I ever played was, thinking back on it, I think it was a grind mission, and that's why it was so terrible. And it drove me away from the Foundry originally when it first came out. But I think one that stands out most is Kirkfat's Relics. 'Cause I really like how he made his custom maps and so much detail with what little that we have. Every time I get onto one of his stories with his custom maps, I always get jealous and curious on how he does it. And Relics was the first one of Kirkfat's missions I ever played. But yeah, that stood out because of all the details in it.
And of course, that's the one that he always gets questions on, is like, how did you make my bridge officers not beam down with me? Even though it was a completely unintentional thing. Which I think we now sort of know possibly what the culprit is, because on that map, he layered a whole bunch of things, floors and ceilings that appear and disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And that messes with the pathing.
The running theory is, and it's incredibly hard to reproduce, is that because the platform, or when the all the pathing gets generated, anything that has a trigger attached to it is not calculated. And so, for the case of pathing, in that particular case, because the floor didn't exist for pathing, it's like the pathing just said, there's a drop here. All of the blocks basically disappeared to the ground below because the pathing thought they were supposed to fall there because it didn't see the floor.
Oh, right on.
This is a problem that a lot of authors will run into with doors. In fact, I run into all the time, is basically I will swap out doors going from locked to unlocked. And when that happens, the pathing does not see the door at all. It just treats it like it's open. And so I actually will often put in invisible walls around the door just so the pathing can see something.
Okay.
Right, Dragoon, do you got a mission that stands out?
I'm gonna have to go with Ali Mac's Mayns of Balnar Moon.
Ooh.
This is probably the biggest. I mean, I'm a sucker for Foundry. You could use a Foundry tech, and this is just. I heard about this mission on Podcast UGC because they had done a review of it, and they talked about, all of this incredible the state transition. So I had kind of an idea of what to expect going into it. That said, when in the part where the generators start exploding and the water starts rising, it still took me a little while to figure out how he was doing that. And anything that can stump me for that long is impressive in my book.
So how did he do it?
He is literally turning off one room and turning on a copy of it that is about a foot lower. And then he's using these explosions to cover the transition.
Nice.
Yeah, it was such an incredibly complicated solution that just appears so seamless because, he's using those explosions. You don't notice that the room is shifted because the camera is shaking.
Oh, right on.
It's such an elegant, complex solution that you just, even knowing how it works, you can't help but be impressed with it. And then just on top of that, the fact that the story was so incredibly engaging and deep. Just get drawn into the atmosphere of what's going on. It just all works together really well.
Mm-hmm.
When I started in the Foundry, that was my target. That was my goal, is how can I come up with anything even remotely close to this?
Well, I'm going to have one that's sort of similar to yours, is one that sort of has inspired me. And it was, I've mentioned it a couple of times, it's Personal Reflections by, I hope I get the author right, XR377.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Mirror Universe episode, and it was the one that inspired me to make my own Mirror Universe episode. Because I was playing through it, and it was exciting, it was really well done, and it was the first Foundry mission I remember that really made me sit up and pay attention. And there's a great twist at the end, which I won't give away, but it made me, at the end I was like, wow, that was great. Mm-hmm. I want to make my own Mirror Universe mission. And I mean, inspiring another author, that's, sort of one of the big things that, one of the biggest compliments that you can have. Right? And, There were a couple other little ones I wanted to give shout-outs to because they stand out in my memory. One of them is Second to Last Outpost by Old Lord Skull, which is the 4-hour mission. And it stands out in my mind as really actually a great gameplay experience because it was back when Bazag was sort of developing Broadcast UGC, which of course is a mission where on video, live, a bunch of players go through a mission and read out all the dialogue. And so we did that, and that was, in hindsight, not a great mission to pick for something like that. Because we didn't know how long it was. But we had such fun doing it. Anyway, even though it took us 4 hours, I wonder if he still has that video somewhere.
I assume he has them all archived somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't one that we broadcasted.
It was 4 hours.
I did not end up being a regular host on the show or anything, but I wonder, I'll have to ask him about that. And the other one was, God, I've forgotten it. Maybe I'll remember it later. But let's see, discussion topics. Who's got a good one?
Actually, I've got an excellent segue discussion topic.
Hey, segues.
Hey, segues.
Having followed up with missions that inspire us, I wanted to ask everyone what criteria by which you judge a Foundry mission. I mean, this is kind of a follow-up to what Hippiejohn was talking about before, and he was kind of getting frustrated that, and we kind of got talking about how different things appeal to different people. So I kind of wanted to ask you guys, I mean, what do you look for a Foundry mission? I mean, what do you use to judge a mission good or bad?
Paramount for me is story. I think that would be the easy answer for me. I hate the 5-star rating system. We know that. But you're not going to lose points, quote unquote, with me for not having a super technical mission as long as the story keeps me engaged. My first answer that occurred in my mind for the question that Drogyn had for us of a mission that stands out for you was the one that first occurred to me because it was the thing that was inspiring me. Something that made me say, I want to do a mission like that, was when I saw Captain Revo's mission where literally you run around Deep Space Nine and the areas around it talking to on-map things that are on the cryptic social map, interacting with the different interactable objects on the map and talking to the different people there. And there's very, very little custom map work in it. It happens at the very end, a little bit, lower decks of Deep Space Nine kind of thing. And it was the story that I think I still ended up, giving that mission as high a marks as I could, because the story kept me occupied and there was nothing technical or, new and interesting necessarily done with Foundry tricks. It was just a very straightforward mission that was full of great stories. So for me, I always judge a mission first and foremost on story more than anything.
So how do you, what
makes
the mission
story
exceptional?
Good? That's the question. Is if you're going to talk about, story is how you judge it. So what makes good story versus bad story?
Alright, in the Foundry, what for me makes good story is I want to feel like whatever time I just spent, whether it's 4 hours or whether it's 30 minutes, that I have had some sort of a I want to have felt in that time all 5 of those stages, or in that we talked about a long time ago, the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the denouement. I want to feel all of that in that amount of time. And the closer that an author comes to doing that, the closer that I consider it to being a good story. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have a cliffhanger ending, because you're reaching falling action. You might even be cutting it off right there at, the climax of the action, but if there's a part 2, I'm not going to care. if you've missed it. If there's not a part 2 yet, Dragoon, then I might get frustrated and walk away from the series. But I like to see those beginning, middle, end. I like to know why I'm doing the mission. I like to feel something that brings me into it and invests me in the mission. I like to feel a real sense of accomplishment somewhere in there, and I like to have the what happens next moment.
This has been something I would think about as, what makes good story, because, reading a lot on the internet, you see people criticize story a lot, and I see the phrase, "that was lazy writing," thrown around a lot. I've seen it thrown at Star Trek things. I've seen it thrown at Cryptic. I've seen it thrown at, the finale of Battlestar Galactica. All kinds of different things. And I'm like, I'm not sure I could identify lazy writing if I saw it.
I think usually what they mean when they say that is that the story didn't resonate with them.
Mm-hmm. But no one story is ever going to resonate with everybody.
True.
But I don't know, as far as judging missions, I don't know. I think I like to take a balanced approach. And story's good, but it's got to have good gameplay. The combat's got to be balanced. The combat has to serve the story, rather than the other way around. I think like in any good movie or TV show, the action is going to serve the story rather than the story serving the action. I don't know. I like to see cool maps, but I don't have to. Mm-hmm. I like to see great custom work, but I don't have to. I've seen great missions told just on plain old default Cryptic maps. But I don't know. It's all about did I have fun playing it? Did I have a good gameplay experience? That's the bottom line for me.
The way you said that first, I think probably is the one that I can most relate to. Did I have fun doing what I just did? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether it was a story mission or a grindy accolade mission or a not so good mission. The question will be, did I have fun for the last X amount of time? And if I did, then I'm probably gonna look at it favorably.
Yeah, did I mind not earning Romulan marks for that last 50 minutes?
Yeah.
What do you think, Rellim? You've been doing reviews of all those, of all the challenge missions. What are sort of the things that you've looked for when you're reviewing those?
Well, when I do a review, I try to be more open-minded than if I'm just playing it personally. But, when I review a mission and everything, I go for the balance between both story and combat. Because if it's too much one or the other, you could completely throw a player off, because not everyone wants to be a shooter, not everyone wants to read. I try to try to find that balance. To me, doing fancy stuff or custom maps is not that big of a deal. It's nice, but not a big deal. The main thing is the balance between story and combat. I don't want to feel like when I'm playing through the mission, be like, is it over yet? Is it over yet? Is it over yet? If I ever get that feeling, it's just...
Oh, yeah. I've gotten that feeling a few times. and it's not what you want your player to be experiencing.
Yeah. So that is it over yet feeling for me. I call it the I want to mash the F button until this is over.
Yeah. So
for some people, that's 2 minutes in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that said, there have been some great non-combat missions made. I mean, Kirkfat and Bazag come to mind as two authors that have made some good. They used to call them diplomatic missions, essentially, not shoot 'em up missions.
It's hard to do conversation puzzles in the Foundry, but
puzzles in general.
Yeah.
So I'm going to amp this up and say, what generally tends to wow you in a Foundry mission? I mean, what makes you say, "Oh man"? I mean, what's no wow mission look like?
Doing something I didn't expect. You know, throwing me a curveball. You know, a believable one story-wise, but taking it in. Because there's certain stories you can sort of predict how they're going to play out, and if somebody takes that and turns it on its head, that'll make me sit up and say, "Wow, that was great." So, throw me a good plot twist. I love them.
I mean,
for me, go ahead.
No, I mean, go ahead and say what you're saying.
I was going to say, for me, it's when someone uses a thing that's familiar in a very unexpected way. So the things that make me say wow are, I think, like Drogyn, when there's something unexpected, a twist, but it's usually, for me, the thing that makes me say wow is when they twist something that is really familiar, not just an expectation. And that usually makes me stand up and say, wow.
Something that is already in the game, or makes you look at something.
Not necessarily already in the game, but already in my social, and it's already in my consciousness. The thing that made me say wow about Infinitesimal Frontier was the taking Fantastic Voyage and making it happen in Star Trek. I went, holy crap, wow! It took something that was familiar, that wasn't ever in the game before, but it was familiar to my, what's the word I'm looking for? It was familiar to my media consciousness. So it took that and twisted it up a little bit.
The other thing I would say that usually makes me go wow is, of course, as an author, when somebody does something from a technical standpoint and I have no idea how. When somebody shows me something new technically that I can't figure out how they did it right off the bat. I really enjoy seeing that, people taking the tool and doing something unexpected with it.
Mac had this one mission that he had up very briefly, and then he pulled it down because he didn't feel it was ready.
Up to his usual standards.
Up to his usual standards. But in it, I mean, it was a really simple mission. I mean, for Alex, especially for Alimac, it was just kind of a little bit of a puzzler. But he had this one of the rooms was supposed to be an astrometrics lab. And he had a platform in this dome-like custom-built room. But you walk in and you switch on the screens, and suddenly you're presented with this whole starscape. And there was a split second where I'm like, how did he do that? And then a minute or so later I realized, he just removed the wall, and it's a star background behind it. But still, I mean, usually when something is presented very seamlessly is usually when you can trip me up, is make a Foundry trick look like it belongs there. If you can pull that off, I mean, you pulled off something impressive. Because I mean,
so here's a question, and I think I might know the answer for when you encounter someone who's done a Foundry trick like that in the two missions from Alimac here, the fact when he was sinking the station in the Mayns of Balnar Moon. I think the mines of Balnar Moon, right? When he was the Mayns, yeah. When he was sinking that, and in this mission that you're talking about, where he made a wall disappear, do you stop when you're in the mission, and does it make you stop and go, "Whoa, how did he do that?" Because for me, I'll go back and play it again and try to figure out how he did it, and the first time through, just experience it and go, "Wow, I like that," kind of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't run into a situation where I haven't been able to figure out how he did it. except for maybe that one where they had the get on the turbolift and transported you suddenly across the map. That one took it took everyone a while to figure out until the author finally explained that it was a trick with basically spawning walls on top of you to screw with the engine and get it to respawn you.
Pendra's teleport trick, yeah.
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 But yeah, in most of the cases I can usually figure out what happened. But I mean, in the Foundry, especially since we're forever trying to dodge around limitations, sometimes there's the expectation of, well, it's just a limitation, deal with it. And I'm one of those people that always is impressed is when you say, no, you don't have to deal with it. I am totally going to,
figure
cover
something
this
out
up.
here.
I'm gonna make this seem completely seamless. I mean, it's a really hard thing to do because, I mean, there are so many limitations we've got to dodge and weave around.
There's a ton of them.
And it's just, what can I say? It's the kind of things that make the devs say, why do you need new stuff? You're doing all these amazing things.
Yeah, so stop doing amazing things, people. No, please keep doing amazing things. I'm really only kidding.
Absolutely.
But I also love a good story. I love my biggest measurement of what makes a really good mission is how deeply immersed I become. If every time I'm forced to suspend my disbelief for some reason, even if it's a forgivable sin, so to speak, I'm pulled out. I have to disengage in my belief, and each time I do that, I get pulled further away from the mission. So the missions that really managed to pull me in, just managed to nail the plot, the flow, the story, the technical. Those are the ones that really, those are the ones that get 5 stars and I don't even have to blink. That does not mean that I don't enjoy a mission that, doesn't have any good technical tricks or, is reasonably good. But if you want to just floor me, that's kind of what I look for.
So I guess to clarify my answer, what I said was story is the number one thing for me. And I guess my discussion topic that I'd like to move into eventually would be what I consider lazy writing, or what people consider lazy writing to be. That doesn't mean that I don't appreciate technical use of the Foundry, and it just doesn't stand out as the thing that becomes the most important. However, if things start to become repeated, this looks like you were lazy about not renaming this thing here, and then this other thing that a little bit later on, it's not another renaming thing, but it's another very simple, unless it's a first time author that might not know about a simple rename this, or a simple change the name of this button and things. If it's a continued amount of lazy through the entirety of the mission, technically, that will make me go, I'm not impressed. I do like to see people who at least pay attention to all those really very basic things, like renaming buttons and renaming, NPCs and things like that. And, those are really basic things. And then when people throw really great technical tricks out there, of course I'm wowed. And they make me wish that I were a more creative and, workaround driven kind of author. So I do certainly appreciate technical things.
It's also a lot of components in what makes a good mission.
Yeah, it's one of the components, certainly.
Well, I think I've got a good topic. Yesterday, and I apologize because I cannot remember the guy's name, or, @ handle, but I got PM'd, by a guy in game who said, hi, I just want to thank you for putting out such great Foundry missions. And
awesome.
He went in and said, I really like your Hollow History missions that you did for the KDF. Those are great. I really hope to see more of those from you in the future. And then we had a nice little conversation. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of what it's all about. Is a good chunk of why we do what we do is to put out something for people to enjoy, other than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a big part of it is enjoying the process ourselves and making the things that we want to make. But a part of it is put it out there. And so I'm going to ask you guys, what has been your best experience with players of your missions? Whether it be in a review that you saw in your mission, or somebody you've talked to who's liked your missions, things like that.
I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of people who've liked my missions, or I've been accused of drawing on both TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, which I thought was kind of funny.
Hey, Golden Age trick, like I said.
I did have, actually, funny enough, the biggest inspiration was Enterprise. At least two of the plot elements are inspired by Enterprise. But I did have one person actually run into me in Deep Space Nine and figure out that I was the same person who had made the Foundry mission, and that was really cool. I've had people who've written me on the forums that have written these really nice things. I mean, it really resonates with me when they realize something I hid away, that they got deep enough to make a connection. I mean, I think there was one person who realized or picked up on the fact that if you read into the backstories of the characters, one of the captains served under the Admiral way back when, which is not something that ever comes up in the story itself. But I mean, if you kind of dig into their backstory file or their background files, and you put two and two together, I mean, you can kind of start to pick up these hidden histories that I put in there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, nobody's picked up on the really big secret I hid in there, because it's not particularly obvious.
Oh, I hate you for saying that, because now I'm going to have to go back and play your mission
play it again.
Oh, you only can. It's not published yet.
Damn, that's true.
It is on Tribble at the moment, because it was one of the missions I got copied over.
Right.
You only have to go as far as those logs that you get access to in the Admiral's office.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a hidden backstory that I'm probably going to pull in front later on.
Awesome.
Nice.
It'd be kind of funny now to see if you can figure out what it is.
For me, it was an STF experience. Whenever I start an STF, especially a ground STF, I don't go on to the Elite STF channel. I pug. When I decide I want to go get Omega Marks by running an STF, because that's going to be fun for the day, I hop on to whatever the next available one is. So I'm running with whomever. And I always just say, hello, hey, this is grenades, or if I'm running the grenade kit, or I just tell people, hi. And one time when I did that, I got a private message from one of the other players that said, hey, are you the guy who wrote Spectres Episode 6? And this was during the time that everybody in the forums was mad at everybody in the forums, and there was the horrible things being said everywhere. And
which time was that?
I don't know. But I thought to myself when I got this private message, I was not a very popular individual in the forums at the time, and I thought, oh no.
You had certainly made yourself a target a little bit.
I certainly had made myself a target, and I thought to myself, oh no. And that was it. He asked the question, and then we just ran the STF. And had a great STF. We finished the optional. It was great. And then, I was back in the first city, wandering around, trading stuff, going to the exchange, and I got a private message from this guy that said, hey, I just wanted to tell you, you did time travel really well, and time travel is really hard. Thanks for a great mission. That was really awesome. It was just kind of nice to get, during that time especially, kind of nice to get somebody who just wanted to say something nice, but didn't take, of course he didn't take the time to interrupt an STF to do it, but that was really nice to hear. So.
What about you, Rellim? Have you had any good interactions with players? 'Cause I know you're a fairly new author, but.
No, not really, because my Rescue 102 only has 2 reviews and Rescue 101 only has 6, so,
Well, geez, everybody go play his missions.
Hey, are they up? But do they use reach markers?
Well, yeah.
There's a couple of parts that are not, mission critical that use reach markers, but they're not up yet, but I'm kind of glad that way when the Foundry comes up, even if they're not up by then, I can at least go in and edit it and make sure that they work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't want to be one of the victims that get the 1 stars like everyone else.
Well, thankfully that can't happen anymore. Reviewing has now been turned off.
Well, yeah, thanks.
But yeah, it still kind of sucks if somebody plays through your mission and it breaks, and even if they can't leave a review, if
they get a bad impression, yeah.
Yeah.
From the message, I know that my mission is broken and unplayable. You can get to a certain point, you can get to the point where you beam on to the USS Reuben James. And once you're there, you can't go anywhere. You're trapped in a Jeffries tube. You have to abandon the mission. So I know that it's broken, and I of course, sent a message to Brand Flakes, community manager, and asking him to, if I need to, if it's possible, pull it down so I can adjust it. And he mentioned that the bug fix that the reach marker problem that's got so many missions being unplayable is the top. It's the number one thing they're worried about in the Foundry right now.
Yeah, Cryptic Frost said the same thing.
Yeah, Cryptic Frost. Didn't he say it in the thread though?
He said it in the thread, and I think
Brandon said it on Twitter, and so we know that that's the most important thing to them as far as the Foundry is concerned. And he mentioned that hopefully the fix that they're, hopefully when they fix it, it will fix the missions that are currently broken, and we won't have to go.
I expect that would be true.
I hope
because
that
I think it's a problem with the sort of the engine as a whole at the moment. Mm-hmm. And if they put in the fix, it will trickle down to all of the Foundry missions and put the map.
That's assuming it doesn't require a republish.
Put the map thing back where it needs to be.
Yeah, that's my hope. I hope that it doesn't, that it doesn't require a whole republish or.
Well, with Rescue 101, I have the social zone of Drazona Station, and since they redone it, I don't know if the same NPC or the same consoles or anything are still there. So, I'm gonna have to test that when I get that mission.
Mm-hmm. I would assume that they would have to.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Fortunately, I used 23rd century Drozana, so that didn't change.
Did they change that at all for Everything Old is New? Or not everything, but what's the Night of the Comet?
Yes, I've played through it. Played through it with the Romulan when I was leveling him because I wanted to go ahead and just do as much as I could.
No, I think the old, the parts where you run around present day Drozana are different.
They're different, but all of the things that you interact with are still there.
Yeah.
Well, my question is, did they update old Drozana to match new Drozana?
No,
so
they did not.
Old Drozana now looks completely different from new Drozana.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I almost kind of want them to go back and update that, but I know it would.
Just think of it as a completely different part of the station.
The way that I see it is because we've had Drozana Station the way that it's been forever, and now all of a sudden we have this incredibly new, fancy, I don't like it, Drozana Station.
That was going to be my next question.
Do you like it?
Do you like it?
Yeah, we have this incredibly new, fancy Drozana Station. It looks to me, the way that my mind sees it, is the Ferengi who runs the place got enough Latinum to renovate.
That doesn't sound like a Ferengi.
Yeah.
But hey, he's making more money. He's making more money now because look at all the new people coming
there's
in.
All kinds of people there now.
See, so for me, I can make it work in a story sense. They've renovated.
I don't know. I mean, I see images of a ROM using a spatula to fix a holosweep because Quark won't spring for any part.
Alright.
It takes Latinum to make Latinum.
True. That is one of the rules of acquisition. But the question of do I like it? No. Because it doesn't have the same feel of being a CD spacebar anymore. The only place in game that now feels like a CD spacebar is a place that I get to visit during a mission. that I never get to go back to.
Oh, you mean Treasure Trading Station?
No.
Oh,
really?
The one on
Nimbus.
Nimbus, yeah.
The one on Nimbus. It's the only place that feels like a seedy spacebar anymore.
I saw a thread requesting that be made into a social zone.
So did I. I
already a social zone?
No.
Well, there's two bars. There's the one.
Oh, you're talking about
Paradise City, and then there's the one in I don't remember the name of the thing, but it's the one where you go after Hassan the Undying.
And it's where you...
Yeah, the one
it's his
fight cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, fight cage and the one that has the male dancer on the table in the Speedo. It's just, it seems like a speedy, it seems like a seedy space station kind of...
That could be an awesome reward for, beating that mission as you unlock gain access to the social zone.
That'd be really cool. That would be really cool.
So, like, maybe a Ferengi or a new Orion has come in and taken over. As like, hey, I don't want to be trouble.
Chalaskie.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
Yes.
That would be hilarious.
Do we need to start a fan campaign?
Draft Chalaskie for ownership of whatever it is.
Ownership of, what was the name of the place?
I can't remember
now. Yeah,
I'm sure it has a name.
It does. It's got a big title up above the entrance.
Up above the entrance too, yeah.
It's not an English word though, so it doesn't come to mind.
And should have our obligatory admonishment of cryptic. Please put that map in the Foundry.
Yes, please.
I wrote Bran Flakes on Twitter that you should just assume that anything I say about the game should include the question, when are we getting it in the Foundry?
Yeah, and by the
way. So I noticed so far 3 people have asked in the priority 1 is doing an interview with Dan Stahl this coming week. Probably tomorrow, I think they're recording it. They usually record on Thursdays, so this won't be out in time, but 3 people...
It might not happen until the weekend.
It might not happen until the weekend, I don't know, that's true. So maybe this will be out in time, and if it is, get your question onto that thread in the forums. They're taking questions for Dan Stahl, and so far 3 of us have asked him, when will the Foundry be out of beta? What will it take to get the Foundry out of beta? 2.5 years, 28 months is too long for the Foundry to be in beta. 28 months is too long for any product to be in beta.
Not if you're Google.
Not if you're Google.
I think Google could get away with it though.
Yeah, we're definitely stretching it for this.
Even Gmail got out of beta eventually.
28 months is two and a third years that it's been in beta.
I mean, I think getting it out of beta is a reasonable
target request and reasonable target goal for the thing, for the tool itself.
And it's going to take, stabilization, going to take bug fixes. It's going to take, who knows what.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
who knows what they would define as out of beta.
An out of beta version may not have any new features that we don't currently have. It just may, hopefully,
certainly possible.
Be more stable.
It might just be more stable. It's true. It's totally okay. This is one of those situations where I would be disappointed to hear the response that all of the feedback and all of the beta feedback that we gave went to making such a great Foundry in Neverwinter. I would be disappointed if that were really what all of our beta feedback here, being members of the Foundry community, went to. But
that's something that I had asked in the Ask Cryptic.
Yeah, if we're really
I
not...
asked that too, and didn't pick it.
And it's okay. It would be okay for me to hear... you're really not gonna get a whole lot more except for new assets as we add them, and I'd be disappointed, but I'd be happy they were honest, and then I would know what I have to work with and how much I want to work with the tool. So I think it's a fair request to be out of beta and know what that means, know what features that means for us.
I mean, really, all of this has just been me trying to get Dan to basically give an answer, or basically state his position on the Foundry. I mean, I know Dan doesn't like to talk about things unless he has an actual plan about how to move forward.
Right. And there may be no plan to move forward, and that's what I'm getting at, is that for me, anyway, that's an okay answer. But
it's also a case of there's things they need to do and the things they would like to do. And the Foundry is definitely in the would like and not in the need. And unfortunately, need takes precedent over like. And, I mean, how many times have they talked about features like, oh, well, we were hoping to get that into such and such season, but it got pushed back. It just didn't make it in. Yep. We ran out of time. We couldn't. I mean, these things just had to take priority. I mean, there's a lot of things that are priorities over the Foundry. I mean, and Dan has already said that he are committed to getting Romulans into the Foundry for as much as what that means. But yeah, but I'm just trying to at least state they're going to come up with a plan. They're thinking about it. They're not thinking about it.
I want to be out of beta.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, it's the clearest, simplest statement of a goal that I could think of. Once
I heard the amount of time, once I heard that it's 28 months, that the tool has been out, and that means it's been in beta for 28 months. 28 months is 2 1/3 years for for this feature of the game to have been in beta. And that's just too long for something to have been in beta without making any real decisions about it.
Especially when, for most of that, for all of that time that you're talking about, it's been live on the live game server. Out there for everybody to utilize.
And utilize, make missions with.
Exploit.
But I mean, it's not like the Foundry has been completely neglected during that time. I mean, the Foundry has grown leaps and bounds since its inception, and I mean, if there are other features in the game that have gotten far less attention, like PvP, crafting. I mean, a lot of systems that are worthwhile too. Yeah, I mean,
we are not exactly the low person on the totem pole.
No, I think I would cry if I were the type of player that enjoyed crafting in a game, and I had to play.
It's not a good game for me.
Well, a while back I did make a list.
you and your lists, I tell you.
I know. This is what happens when you take the Foundry away from me too long.
You make lists.
You come up with lists and your grand plan to save champions online.
Yeah. Way too much time on my hands.
So I think recently that that part of your list, one of the things I remember you saying was that they had to go back now, and maybe this wasn't you, I don't know where I heard this, had to go back and they had to now really seriously look at their old content.
Well, that was in the Ask Cryptic.
That was in the Ask Cryptic?
Yeah, they were talking about going back and redoing the early Fed stuff
that's kind of bring it up one of those things that they want to do, and I think he indicated that they had already started working on something.
Yeah, or at the very least, it sounds like they're in the planning stages and that they're moving forward. Like this is something that they want to do.
I think would be great.
I
was really excited because apparently this also includes redoing ship interiors, or at least the Fed.
And I mean, and I'm somebody with 3 level 50 tunes on the Fed side, so I probably would not start a new tune, but I have no compunctions about going back and replaying things if they've redone it. I wouldn't mind that at all.
I've been going back and replaying Klingon content. I'm like Captain level Klingon.
If they redo the Federation tutorial, I'll make one because I've always wanted a POC-LED.
Yeah, I had a master plan for that one too.
Always wanted to make things go.
Yeah, I want to make them go. So that would get. I mean, if for no reason, I would hate to miss the new Klingon tutorial. If I were only playing the new content on my Lieutenant Generals, I would be missing what I think is probably one of the strongest pieces of the new content, which is the tutorial. It's really good. That's all I can say is it's really good. And I would not want to miss at the very least I would make up a new character so I could play through the tutorial and then delete him so that I could experience the new content. You know, that would be at the very least if they were to redo the Fed tutorials.
Well, I mean, there's nothing stopping us from creating a new character just to play through the tutorial.
Yeah.
Honestly, the funny thing is, I don't hate the current Fed tutorial. In fact, kind of one of the things I've been lamenting in some certain other MMOs is that a certain lack of epicness in their tutorials. It's like seriously, this is your introduction to the game. Grab my attention. And at the very least, even the Feta tutorial, even in its current state, is very action heavy. It grabs your attention very quickly and says, "This is serious. Pay attention."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of things I would love to see them polished up. I mean, especially since how much assets have evolved since it was originally built. I've gone over with you guys my thought about swapping around the way the player comes in possession of the starship. But other than that, I mean, I like how epic it feels. I mean, we're going up against the Borg in round 1.
Yeah.
I mean, it grabs you, and I really want them to keep that.
I don't want to see them lose that. I would love to see them actually take a real listen to the idea that you put out there, because that would make the story of what happens in that tutorial so much stronger. Right now it seems very confused to me. When I'm first on the ship, I walk onto this beautiful bridge, gigantic bridge with all of these bells and whistles, and as soon as I take control of the ship, it's suddenly this dinky little bridge.
Yeah.
And I don't, there's no logic behind that for me as to why it's important that's,
what's really bizarre is that used to not be the case.
Really?
Back in the original tutorial, when you go up to the bridge to talk to the captain, it's not exactly the same, but it's very close to your starting bridge.
That would make sense to me.
And then when they redid the tutorial at one point, they put in what is essentially a version of one of the I think it's a version of one of the C-Store bridges, which is a variation.
It's one of the Sovereign style bridges, I believe.
Yeah, I can't think which is it. The Sovereign pack?
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
I've bought one bridge pack the entire time because I liked it. But
I think I bought them all when they first came out. Probably haven't used hardly any of them.
That's another one of those circumstances that if buying the bridge pack in the C-Store unlocked everything, all 3 versions of that bridge and everything else in the Foundry, I would probably buy all the bridge packs.
I think for the time it would take to get those in the Foundry, they would rather just
we have a fair amount. But not all. We certainly have enough bridges in
because they went through it, and there was an update not too long ago where they put in a whole bunch of bridges.
Oh yeah. And I'm not saying that we don't have enough. That's just another one of those. They've already monetized the Foundry, even though they won't admit it. That I've spent a little bit of money on them. That if they were to make the bridges something that when you bought them in the C-Store, you unlock them in the Foundry as well, and you got all 3 or 4 versions of those bridges, because when you buy the Sovereign bridge pack, you get 3 different Sovereign bridges. When you buy one of the other the pack that I bought got me 4 different versions of the bridge that I use. So I would have purchased more bridge packs if that unlocked more bridges for me to use in the Foundry.
Yeah, I think the issue, though, is that it would require the same effort, or probably slightly more effort, to monetize the bridges versus just putting them in.
Yeah, I'm certain that it would. And it's just kind of we've talked about it in the pre-show and such, and you know that it's just my opinion that you're right, it's too low of a priority. They're never going to fix it, but to say that they haven't monetized the Foundry. They don't make a lot off of it, but they've made $12 off of me because of the Foundry. I paid them $12, the equivalent of $12, to get things to use in the Foundry. To me, that is directly monetizing the Foundry, and I know they say they don't monetize the Foundry. And
technically they said they have no intention of monetizing the Foundry. Right. And as far as we know, this is not intentional.
It's not intentional. It is a bug. We know it's a bug, and I know that it's low on their list of something to be fixed. But it does raise to mind what Drogyn keeps bringing up, which is if I buy it in the C-Store and it unlocks in the Foundry as well, I'm more likely to buy it in the C-Store. It would be an acceptable way, in my mind, to monetize the Foundry.
Yeah. And I know I said this to you in the pre-show, but once Foundry editing is opened up, I mean, I would go ahead and post this in the Foundry bug forums, just to make sure it's on Cryptic
Make sure
Frost
it's on
list.
Cryptic Frost radar. Yeah.
Because there are some things that, we've reported many times, but in the period before Cryptic Frost really came on and started being involved in the Foundry.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of taken on become the spokesperson for getting Foundry bugs fixed.
Yeah. Yeah, I will.
Which we can't thank him enough for.
Yeah, once we get editing back. Once we get editing back, and I mean, it's not like that bug is going to go away. I could go to the forums and post it in the bug forums today, I suppose, and just hope that he has a look at it, because it doesn't bother me that I spent $12 to get the 2 cat races that I can use now in Foundry missions when I'm making them. I would have done that had it been an intentional thing. It just means that, to me, it's a bug that should be somewhere on their radar of being fixed. If indeed it is a bug, and if indeed they don't intend to monetize Foundry authors. It's just my opinion on it.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, Rellimtime, you got a topic for us to discuss?
I think I would go to the topic that I was emailing about you before about, getting what we want from the Foundry. Either by, should we monetize the Foundry, or with assets and packs and stuff, or should we, have people volunteer their own time to help Cryptic for low price at Cryptic to help get this assets in?
Unfortunately, there are issues with both of those. I mean, first off, the asset pack runs into the problem of it would be more effort to try and implement than it would payback, because there are just so few Foundry authors. I mean, we make up such a tiny fraction of the player base. Then there's the question of helping Cryptic out, and there are 2 problems with that. First off, I mean, in order to actually do the work, we would need access to their internal system and tools, which no company in their right mind would ever let us anywhere close to. The second issue that runs into that has to do with California state laws. And basically, and they've said this before in the past when it comes to volunteering help, that they are literally, it is illegal for them to accept help because they're a for-profit company without some kind of compensation. So they would literally have to pay us to do it. I mean, we couldn't volunteer for them, because, I mean, they financially benefit from it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would run afoul of California labor laws.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would, move to California and say, pay me $1 and teach me how to do this.
Yeah, I've kind of thought about that too. It's like hire me for $1 or something like that.
If I didn't have to worry about money, that's what I would do.
But anyway, I mean,
but you're right. It is a difficult,
and
an unfortunate thing.
Now that I think about it, what was it when Jesse Heinig was recovering from his surgery? I think he stated at one point that he couldn't do any work from home because of the way their system is set up. You have to be on site in order to have access to their systems. Just for security, stuff like that.
Not every company does it that way, but Cryptic might.
No, but I mean, especially, they have versioning software and whatnot that I'm pretty sure would not play well over VPN.
But as for monetizing the Foundry, I mean, this is something that comes up quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think there's this idea out there that if Cryptic was making some money off of this, they would then have an incentive to develop for it. I'm not entirely sure if that would be the case.
I don't think it would.
It would not. It just wouldn't be enough. I mean, look at when was the last time we got a bridge pack?
Yeah, it's because they don't sell.
It's not that none of them sells. I'm sure some people buy them. I mean, I bought the D-Space 9 pack for the Belfast bridge, but it's just not enough. I mean, in comparison to what they make off of ships and lockboxes, it's pennies.
And I'm sure they would not make enough money off of us. to justify.
And I mean,
sadly, so we sort of have to rely on their charity. You might say.
And we've said this in the past that
please, sir, may I have some more?
The value in the Foundry is not in what they make off of.
It is not direct value. It is.
Yeah.
It is essentially
it's
making
funny.
the game better.
There's been that thread in the Foundry forums lately, and this is what happens when you deprive Foundry authors of the Foundry for too long. Is strange threads like this pop up. Basically, going off about the fact that they charge dilithium for the slots.
I saw that, and I was like, I don't know.
No, the reason they charge dilithium for the slots is basically to put a little bit of a stopgap for basically spammers and exploiters. I mean, it basically means that you have to at least invest a little bit in the game to get access to the Foundry. But I mean,
right.
it's
still not technically a paywall because you can't earn that in game.
Not to mention, it's an absurdly cheap paywall. I mean, it's 10,000 dilithium for 4 slots.
That's, I think, less than 100 Zen.
It's less than 2 days of dilithium grinding.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I of course have been here forever, so I got all of my slots. I maxed out on slots just with the dilithium from when they converted all of your previous currency to dilithium. So I had a bunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was before you could even change dilithium over into Zen. So, I mean, that's how I got all my slots.
Yeah, it's the dilithium amount is basically a nominal amount meant just to make sure that somebody has to invest at least a little bit of time in the game before they get access to the Foundry.
Right, it's a tiny stopgap measure.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It's a pain to try and grind dilithium on a new character. So you either have to level up that character or they have to spend some actual money in order to get the dilithium. Which, I mean, at the very least, it establishes a paper trail.
True.
So,
True.
Yeah, it's basically there just to kind of keep anybody from walking in and making Foundry mission.
Maybe it needs to be higher.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure I'll get crucified for saying that, but
yeah, there you go. See if all those people wondering.
I don't actually really think that, but
asking for the DOF packs would be willing to pay more for their Foundry slots.
But I mean, all that said, I mean, I don't know how much work it would take, but I've always thought, and I've said this many times before, that any C-Store purchase ought to come automatically with a Foundry unlock. So, you buy that Vesta that you've always wanted. You can play it on your tune. You also get it unlocked, so you can put it as an NPC in the Foundry.
Right. People are still going to buy it because it's a Vesta. Mm-hmm.
But there might be some people out there who wouldn't buy it otherwise, but would buy it because they can get it in the Foundry.
Right. And it's just an added bonus that you're not making it just so the people in the Foundry will buy it. But if you have something that might not, my guess is, have sold very well, environmental suits, maybe you can pick up a few more sales by making them available in the Foundry.
They would absolutely,
even if it's just a couple more.
Because I love the art. Those things are beautiful.
Yeah.
But I would
get just useless in game.
I'm pretty sure if Dan were sitting here right now, his answer would be, we'd rather just, if we could just find the time, we'd just rather just put them in.
Yeah, but they ain't been finding the time, so.
Yeah. I don't know that
more than a few things.
Charging for it is going to change them finding time, though.
So I guess my answer totally changes the conversation away from monetizing it to a different approach to what Rellim asked here, which was how do we get what we want in the Foundry? And I think we're starting to see how we get what we want in the Foundry by communicating in honest, non-demanding ways with the people that show that they're willing to help us, and accepting that they can't do everything we want right away.
Ask and ye shall receive eventually.
Eventually. I mean, Zero has taken it upon herself to learn how to put assets in the Foundry, probably because it's something she wanted to learn anyway. But regardless, that shows that she's willing to help the Foundry community out, and so communicating in a non-demanding way the things that we would like to see, and finding out what they can actually do, and talking, like you say, putting the reports of the bugs in the forums again, because now we know we have someone there who actually gives a damn and who actually is looking at them and responding to us and letting us know what's going on. Like, that's how we're going to get what we want in the Foundry, is by establishing a community and a relationship with the devs, with the QA people, with the folks who also want the Foundry to succeed. And that's how I think we get what we want in the Foundry. It's not by being demanding and going on podcast after podcast, not us particularly, but or going on the forums and saying, we want this now, or, the way that people
we demand this now, and you're assholes if you don't put it in.
The people who have gone on the forums and, I'm a gold member, I'm a lifetime member, I deserve to be getting these bugs fixed right now with... We can't make demands like that.
Or the guy who posted about, we should file a class action lawsuit.
That made me laugh.
I love those ones.
It really just comes down to building community with the people that obviously love Trek as much as we do, even if sometimes their storytelling decision might mean they love it in a different way than we do. It doesn't matter. They love Trek as much as we do, and they want the Foundry to succeed. So if we work...
anyone who thinks that the devs don't like Trek or don't get Trek has never paid any attention to the devs. I mean...
So... It just says to me that the answer to the question to me isn't monetize the Foundry. It isn't. It's accept the limitations of the other human beings that are trying to help us and work with them and communicate with them and thank them when they do something nice. Not say, well, thanks for fixing that, or thanks for getting that in there. How about this other thing that you forgot and whatever? Because that's not an honest thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll tell you one of the things that I did is, because I've said it before, I've had a very, very smooth launch of Legacy Ramos. I've experienced very few bugs, very few disconnects, very little lag. It's just been great, absolutely great for me. So I went, when today's patch, Wednesday's patch, where they introduce all these bug fixes for things that people have been experiencing, I went in there and I said, you know what, this has been a smooth run for me, but thank you as well for putting in these bug fixes, because I know this is important to people.
Mm-hmm. It's just saying thank you sometimes is really important to people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even just kind of hanging around with Brandflakes on Twitter. I mean, that guy loves to give good news. I mean, he lives for that.
Oh, absolutely. He gets so excited when he's got a devlog to post.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about a guy who lives and breathes Trek. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Just look at him and get excited.
It's sort of the joke that, anybody who does any sort of positive, PR for Cryptic or for the game, everybody jokes, or, everybody accuses them. I don't know if it's a joke or not. Everybody accuses them, oh, you must be after Brandflake's job. and sometimes, I'd love to have his job.
Then I think of all the times I wouldn't want to have his job, but
yeah, absolutely. Gotta have a thick skin.
The way he manages to keep a positive attitude on some of the stuff he probably has to deal with.
Him and Taco Fangs, they're great.
Yeah, but even Captain Gecko. I mean, just listen to him talk about Trek. I mean, the guy keeps a freaking bat lift on his wall.
So that's my answer to the question is that's how we get what we want. It's community. And it's building community with the devs that care about us.
Devs are human. I mean,
yeah, they have limitations, people.
I mean, if you had two Foundry missions targeted at two different audiences, and one of them was just getting glowing praise, but they also were asking a few things, and then the other was just harping on how horrible it was and demanding that you make these changes. Which Foundry mission would you work on?
Yeah.
I mean,
positive feedback trumps negative, even if the positive is requesting that you do something.
Yeah.
To make it better.
It's a very true statement.
And I think that's a good place to leave it for the night. So, everybody, say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Wow, we did that all at different times this week.